For more than 150 million years, Earth was a realm transformed beyond recognition, a world where the very air, land and sea teemed with life forms of astonishing size and variety. This was the Mesozoic era, a time when the continents themselves were still drifting apart, and the climate was far warmer and more humid than today. It was an age ruled not by mammals, but by a spectacular dynasty of reptiles, the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs came in a bewildering array of forms, from the towering, long-necked sauropods that stretched over 30 meters in length to the nimble, bird-like theropods that darted through the undergrowth. Their diversity was unmatched, with thousands of species adapted to every conceivable environment. Great herds of sauropods, such as Argentinosaurus and Brachiosaurus, thundered across vast plains of ferns and cycads. Their immense bodies, weighing as much as a dozen elephants, left deep impressions in the soft earth, shaping the very landscape as they moved in search of food and water. In the dense, humid forests, armoured giants like Triceratops and Ankylosaurus browsed on tough, fibrous plants. Their bodies were protected by thick plates and formidable horns, adaptations that helped them survive in a world where danger lurked at every turn. The Mesozoic world was a vibrant tapestry of life. Giant herbivores shaped the vegetation, while swift predators stalked their prey. Every niche was filled, from the swampy lowlands to the arid uplands, creating a dynamic ecosystem where the balance of power was constantly shifting. Above the forests and plains, the skies belonged to the pterosaurs. These remarkable flying reptiles ranged from the tiny Aneurognathus, no larger than a sparrow, to the colossal Quetzalcoatlus, whose wingspan rivaled that of a small airplane. They soared on thermal currents, hunting fish, insects, and even small vertebrates. The seas, too, were ruled by giants. Warm, shallow oceans covered much of the planet, providing a haven for marine reptiles that grew to monstrous proportions. Mosasaurs, with their elongated bodies and powerful tails, were the apex predators of these ancient oceans, preying on anything that crossed their path. Plesiosaurs, with their long necks and paddle-like limbs, glided gracefully through the water, snatching fish and squid with lightning speed. The world was a living mosaic, with reptiles dominating every environment. From the sun-baked deserts to the lush river valleys, from the highest mountain slopes to the deepest seas, their reign was absolute. Dawn would break over a landscape alive with the calls of giant animals, the ground shaking beneath their feet, the air filled with the beating of leathery wings and the distant splash of marine hunters. Yet, beneath the towering ferns and cycads, in the tangled undergrowth, life continued on a smaller scale. Here, in the shadows, creatures adapted to a world dominated by giants eked out their existence. Small, secretive animals scurried through the leaf litter, emerging only under the cover of darkness to avoid the ever-present threat of predation. These early mammals, no larger than a modern mouse, were masters of stealth and survival. Their bodies were covered in fur, an adaptation that allowed them to regulate their temperature and thrive in the cool of night. To the colossal dinosaurs, these tiny creatures were little more than fleeting shadows, barely noticed as they darted between the roots and rocks. Their survival depended on agility, keen senses, and the ability to vanish at the slightest hint of danger. They fed on insects, seeds, and whatever else they could find, always alert to the thunderous approach of a passing giant. With acute hearing and a powerful sense of smell, these small animals navigated a perilous world, foraging for food while avoiding the ever-present threat of becoming prey. They lived in the margins, in burrows and crevices, biding their time as the giants above them ruled the world. 66 million years ago, this was the established order. Herds of massive reptiles roamed the land, while the skies and seas were filled with equally formidable creatures. Every corner of the planet was claimed by these giants. From the depths of the oceans to the highest canopies, reptiles occupied every ecological niche, each species perfectly adapted to its environment. The dinosaurs, in particular, were the undisputed masters of the land. Their forms had been honed by millions of years of evolution, resulting in a dazzling array of shapes, sizes, and behaviors. They were everywhere, herding, hunting, nesting, and thriving in a world that seemed made for them alone. But the universe is a place of constant change, where even the mightiest can be brought low by forces beyond their control. Far above this vibrant living world, in the cold, silent reaches of space, a massive object was on a fateful journey toward Earth. A silent harbinger of catastrophe, it raced toward the planet, destined to bring the long reign of the giants to a sudden, fiery and world-altering end. The end of the age of dinosaurs did not come with a gentle fading, nor with a slow, predictable decline. Instead, it arrived in a single, cataclysmic instant, an event so violent and sudden that it would forever alter the course of life on Earth. The world was plunged into chaos in a moment, as the sky itself seemed to darken and tremble, heralding a disaster of unimaginable scale. The harbinger of this apocalypse was a colossal asteroid, a mountain-sized rock measuring nearly 10 kilometers, over 6 miles, across, dwarfing anything in its path. Its mass and velocity made it a force of nature, unstoppable and indifferent to the thriving world below. For millions of years, this asteroid had wandered the silent reaches of the solar system, its orbit shaped by the gravitational pull of distant planets and the sun. Its journey was long and aimless, until fate aligned its path with that of Earth. When it finally entered Earth's atmosphere, it did so at a staggering speed, roughly 20 kilometers per second, or about 20 times faster than a rifle bullet. The friction with the air superheated its surface, turning it into a blazing fireball. To any creature gazing skyward, the asteroid would have appeared as a new star, impossibly bright, growing larger and more intense with every heartbeat. In mere seconds, it outshone the sun, casting stark shadows and filling the air with a sense of impending doom. The impact site was a shallow sea, in what is now the Yucatán Peninsula of Mexico. The asteroid struck with such force that the energy released was equivalent to more than 1 billion nuclear bombs detonating simultaneously. The collision unleashed a blinding flash of light and a fireball that vaporized everything within hundreds of kilometers. The shockwave raced outward, flattening forests and sending tsunamis surging across ancient coastlines. The explosion was so immense that it instantly transformed rock, water and air into a superheated plasma, creating a mushroom cloud that soared into the upper atmosphere. The impact gouged a crater nearly 180 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep, an open wound in the planet's crust. The force of the collision vaporized the asteroid and a vast portion of the Earth's surface, hurling debris across continents. The Chicxulub impact sent seismic shockwaves racing through the planet, triggering earthquakes and volcanic eruptions thousands of miles from ground zero. The crust itself rippled and cracked, releasing pent-up energy in a global convulsion. For any animal within sight of the impact, the world ended in an instant. The blinding flash, the searing heat and the shockwave left no chance for escape. The initial burst of light was so intense that it ignited wildfires across entire continents, setting forests ablaze and filling the air with choking smoke. The thermal radiation incinerated everything in its path, leaving behind a landscape of charred remains and smouldering ash. The fires raged for days, consuming vast swathes of vegetation and animal life. The sky itself seemed to burn as firestorms swept across the land, fueled by the debris and heat of the impact. Trillions of tons of molten rock, glass and dust were blasted into the atmosphere and beyond, forming a shroud that would soon encircle the globe. This debris, superheated and glowing, rained down for hours, igniting secondary fires and adding to the devastation. The shockwave flattened forests for thousands of miles, snapping ancient trees like twigs and scouring the land of life. The roar of the blast was the loudest sound the planet had ever known, a deafening cacophony that echoed across continents. The ground itself heaved and buckled, as if the very bones of the earth were breaking. Earthquakes and aftershocks rippled outward, toppling mountains and reshaping coastlines. In the aftermath, the world was unrecognizable. Once lush landscapes were reduced to barren wastelands, the remnants of the age of dinosaurs scattered across a devastated terrain. In mere minutes, a vibrant, thriving planet was transformed into a vision of desolation and fire. The transition from life to death was swift and merciless. The stable world that had nurtured the dinosaurs for over 150 million years was shattered. The survivors faced a new reality. A sky darkened by ash and soot, temperatures plummeting as sunlight was blocked, and a global winter that would last for months, even years. Photosynthesis ground to a halt, food chains collapsed, and the struggle for survival began under conditions harsher than any before. The catastrophe from space had rewritten the rules of life on Earth, setting the stage for a new era to emerge from the ashes. In the moments after the asteroid struck, the world was thrown into a maelstrom of destruction and upheaval. The sky darkened as a shroud of ash and smoke blotted out the sun, casting the land into an eerie twilight. The ground itself trembled with a violence never before experienced on Earth. The energy unleashed by the impact did not simply gouge a crater. It sent shockwaves racing through the planet's crust, fracturing bedrock and sending up plumes of dust. The Earth convulsed, and the very continent seemed to groan under the strain. A titanic earthquake, thousands of times more powerful than any that would ever be measured, radiated outward from the impact site. Fissures yawned open, swallowing forests and ancient riverbeds, while entire mountain ranges shuddered and shifted. The seismic chaos triggered landslides that sent hillsides cascading into valleys, and in tectonically active regions, volcanoes erupted in fury. Ash and lava spewed into the sky, adding to the choking darkness, while deep chasms split the land, forever altering the face of continents. The planet itself vibrated like a struck bell, its resonance destabilizing ecosystems. Rivers changed course, lakes drained or overflowed, and the land heaved in relentless aftershocks, leaving no refuge untouched. But the devastation did not end with the quakes. The impact unleashed a fiery onslaught that swept across the globe. The heat from the blast zone ignited everything in its path, and the world's forests became tinderboxes. Trillions of tons of molten rock and debris were hurled skyward, only to rain back down as incandescent spherules. These glowing fragments falling through the atmosphere generated a searing heat that enveloped the planet. The spherules streaked across the sky in a global meteor shower, their friction with the air turning the upper atmosphere into a broiling oven. The heat pulse was so intense that it scorched the surface, igniting wildfires wherever there was fuel to burn. The sky glowed red and orange, a relentless furnace that baked the land. The heat waves swept across continents, vaporizing shallow lakes and drying up wetlands, while the air shimmered with the haze of burning vegetation. Wildfires erupted on a scale never before seen. Flames leapt from treetop to treetop, racing across grasslands and devouring ancient woodlands. The infernos raged for days, consuming everything in their path and leaving behind only charred remnants. Once lush forests and fern prairies, home to countless species, were reduced to blackened wastelands. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burning, and the ground was littered with the smouldering remains of what had once been vibrant ecosystems. Along the coasts, a different terror was brewing. The impact, striking in a shallow sea, displaced unimaginable volumes of water, setting the stage for a watery cataclysm. A tsunami of unprecedented scale surged outward, a wall of water taller than any creature could fathom. The wave raced across the ocean, gathering speed and power as it approached the land. Some scientific models suggest the first wave towered over a mile high, dwarfing even the tallest cliffs. It crashed into the coastlines with a force that pulverized rock and swept entire forests into the sea. The tsunami surged inland for hundreds of miles, uprooting trees, scouring the soil, and leaving behind a chaotic jumble of debris, marine creatures, and shattered land. Rivers reversed course, and lowlands became temporary seas. The devastation did not end with the first wave. Aftershocks and underwater landslides sent more waves crashing into the coasts, while seiches, giant standing waves, sloshed back and forth in inland seas and lakes, compounding the destruction. In this world of fire, quakes and water, survival was a matter of chance. Creatures huddled in burrows or beneath rocks, seeking shelter from the relentless onslaught, while others were swept away or consumed by flames. Even those that survived the initial impact faced new threats, firestorms that raced across the land, tsunamis that swallowed forests, and aftershocks that toppled whatever remained standing. The world had become a deadly lottery, where the odds of survival were vanishingly small. The land was littered with the remains of the fallen, and the silence that followed was broken only by the crackle of fire and the distant roar of waves. Ecosystems that had thrived for millions of years were obliterated in mere hours. Ancient forests, teeming wetlands and sprawling plains were reduced to wastelands, their intricate webs of life torn apart. The air was thick with choking smoke and ash, blotting out the sun and plunging the world into a prolonged darkness. The silhouettes of burnt trees stood as grim reminders of the devastation. The oceans, too, were transformed. Murky with sediment and debris, their currents carried the detritus of shattered continents and drowned forests, while marine life struggled to survive in the altered waters. The planet reeled from the onslaught of disasters, each one catastrophic but together an extinction-level event of unimaginable scale. Fire, quakes and water worked in concert, reshaping the world in a matter of days. The age of dinosaurs was ending in a crescendo of elemental fury. Fire scorched the land, earth quaked and split, and water swept away the remnants. In this crucible of destruction, the stage was set for a new world to emerge from the ashes. After the initial violence of the impact, the fires and the tsunamis, a more insidious and long-lasting threat emerged, one that would reshape the very fabric of life on Earth. The colossal amount of dust, soot from the global wildfires, and vaporized rock that had been blasted into the sky did not simply fall back down. Instead, these particles formed a thick, swirling veil that wrapped the planet in darkness. The finest particles remained suspended high in the stratosphere, forming a dense, impenetrable shroud that began to spread around the entire globe. This shroud was not just a barrier to sunlight, it was a barrier to life itself. This dense cloud of debris acted like a planetary sunshade, blocking the light of the sun. The world was plunged into a deep, unnatural gloom. Day turned into a perpetual twilight, a dark and eerie gloom that would persist, not for days or weeks, but for months and even years. The rhythm of day and night was lost, replaced by a ceaseless, oppressive dimness. The world was plunged into a prolonged and devastating impact winter. Temperatures dropped rapidly, and the warmth that had once nurtured lush forests and teeming wetlands vanished almost overnight. With the sun's light and warmth unable to reach the surface, global temperatures plummeted. Frost crept across the land, rivers froze solid, and snow blanketed even the warmest regions. The planet, which had been warm and balmy just moments before the impact, began to freeze. Lush jungles and sprawling plains were transformed into icy wastelands in a matter of weeks. It was a sudden and dramatic shift into a cold, dark world. The familiar sounds of life faded, replaced by the howling of relentless winds and the silence of snow falling on barren ground. This drastic climate change was a shock to all living things, but it was especially devastating for the planet's primary producers, the plants. The cold and darkness halted their growth, and the world's green mantle began to wither. Photosynthesis, the fundamental process that powers almost all life on Earth, came to a grinding halt. Without sunlight, the engines of life sputtered and died. Without sunlight, plants from the microscopic phytoplankton in the oceans to the giant trees on land could no longer create energy. The oceans, once alive with blooms of plankton, grew empty and still. They began to wither and die on a global scale. Forests fell silent as leaves shriveled and branches snapped under the weight of ice. Grasslands turned to frozen deserts and wetlands became icy tombs. The collapse of the plant kingdom sent a deadly ripple effect up the food chain. Herbivores, once abundant, found themselves in a world stripped of sustenance. The great herbivorous dinosaurs, such as the duck-billed hadrosaurs and the horned ceratopsians, which depended on a constant and abundant supply of fresh vegetation, were the first to suffer. Their massive bodies, built for feasting on greenery, now became a burden in a world of scarcity. With their food sources vanishing before their eyes, they began to starve. The once thunderous herds dwindled, their bones soon scattered across the frozen ground. The vast herds that had once roamed the Cretaceous plains were reduced to desperate, weakened survivors in a barren, frozen world. The struggle for survival became ever more desperate as the cold deepened and food grew scarcer. The death of the herbivores sealed the fate of the carnivores. Predators, once rulers of their domains, now prowled empty landscapes, their prey gone, their power meaningless. A fearsome Tyrannosaurus rex, the apex predator of its time, was helpless without the large plant-eaters it hunted for food. The mighty hunters became victims of the same relentless winter. This long, dark winter was perhaps the most lethal phase of the extinction event. It was not a single blow, but a slow, suffocating grip that tightened with each passing day. It wasn't a quick, violent end, but a slow, grinding process of starvation and freezing. Each day, the world grew colder, the snow deeper, and the silence more profound. The very air became toxic. The cold was not the only enemy. Poison now drifted on the wind. The asteroid had struck a region rich in sulfur-bearing minerals, which were vaporized and flung into the atmosphere. These chemicals mingled with the clouds, creating a new and deadly threat. This sulfur combined with water to form sulfuric acid, which then fell back to Earth as acid rain, poisoning the soil, lakes, and the surface layers of the oceans. The land and water, already frozen and lifeless, became toxic as well. The world was now not only dark and cold, but also toxic. The few survivors faced a gauntlet of deadly challenges: freezing temperatures, poisoned water, and a sky that never cleared. It was an environment so hostile that it pushed the vast majority of life on Earth past the brink of extinction. Only the hardiest, most adaptable creatures, those able to endure hunger, cold, and darkness, would have any hope of surviving this endless winter. The ecosystems that had flourished for millions of years were shattered, and the world entered a new, uncertain age. The end of the Cretaceous period was marked by a convergence of cataclysmic forces, an asteroid impact of unimaginable scale, volcanic eruptions that darkened the skies, firestorms that swept across continents, and tsunamis that reshaped coastlines. These events did not simply disrupt life. They unraveled the very fabric of ecosystems that had thrived for millions of years. The world was plunged into chaos, and the aftermath was nothing short of apocalyptic. It is estimated that approximately 75% of all species on Earth were wiped out. This was not a selective culling, but a sweeping erasure that left few survivors. The land, the seas and the skies all bore witness to the collapse of ancient lineages. This was a mass extinction of staggering proportions, an event that fundamentally reset the course of life on the planet. The biosphere, once teeming with diversity, was reduced to isolated pockets of survivors clinging to existence in a world transformed beyond recognition. No corner of the globe was left untouched. From the lush equatorial forests to the polar coasts, devastation reigned. The interconnectedness of life meant that the fall of one species often triggered the collapse of many others, creating a cascade of extinctions. Life in the oceans suffered just as terribly as life on land. The once vibrant reefs and teeming shallows became graveyards, their inhabitants decimated by the sudden changes. The darkness killed off the phytoplankton, collapsing marine food webs, and with them the fate of countless species that depended on these microscopic plants for survival. Meanwhile, acid rain made the surface waters toxic for many organisms, especially those that built shells or skeletons from calcium carbonate. The oceans, once a cradle of life, became a hostile environment for even the hardiest of creatures. The most famous victims of this event were, of course, the non-avian dinosaurs. These magnificent animals, which had dominated the land for over 100 million years, were suddenly and utterly extinguished. After 150 million years of dominance, their reign came to a complete and final end. The world that had been shaped by their presence was left eerily silent. Every last one of them, from the mightiest sauropod to the smallest raptor, perished. Their eggs, their young, their herds, all vanished, leaving only bones and imprints in stone. Their large size, which had been a key to their success for so long, became their greatest liability. The resources they needed to survive simply no longer existed. Their massive bodies required huge amounts of food, a resource that had simply vanished. The collapse of plant life meant starvation for the giants of the Mesozoic. Being cold-blooded, or at least not fully warm-blooded like mammals and birds, they would have struggled to cope with the sudden and prolonged plunge in global temperatures. The chill seeped into every corner of the world, making survival even more difficult. There was nowhere to hide from a catastrophe that engulfed the entire planet. The darkness and cold were inescapable, and the world's great survivors found themselves outmatched by the scale of disaster. It wasn't just the dinosaurs that disappeared. The extinction event swept away entire groups of animals and plants, erasing ancient lineages that had flourished for eons. The giant marine reptiles, the mosasaurs and plesiosaurs that had ruled the seas, also vanished completely. Their powerful forms, once the terror of the oceans, were reduced to fossils in the mud. In the skies, the pterosaurs, their flying cousins, were wiped out, leaving the air empty of its former masters. The great wings that once cast shadows over the land would never beat again. On the seafloor, entire families of shelled creatures like the ammonites, which had been abundant for millions of years, became extinct. Their intricate shells, now fossilized, are all that remain of their once thriving kind. The fossil record tells this story with dramatic clarity. Layer upon layer, the evidence of life's abundance gives way to sudden silence. In rock layers around the world, there is a distinct boundary known as the KPG boundary. This thin, dark line marks the moment when the old world ended and a new one began. Below this line, the rock is filled with a rich diversity of dinosaur and other Cretaceous fossils. The world was alive, complex, and interconnected. Directly above it, they are all gone. The suddenness of the change is unmistakable. A world erased in the blink of a geological eye. The evidence for this catastrophic end is written in the Earth's geology. The rocks themselves bear silent witness to the devastation. The KPG boundary layer is enriched with the element iridium, a metal that is very rare in the Earth's crust, but is common in asteroids. This chemical fingerprint is the signature of the impact that changed everything. This iridium layer is the worldwide chemical signature of the vaporized asteroid, a thin layer of dust that settled out of the atmosphere after the impact. It is a silent testament to the violence of that day. Scientists have also found shocked quartz and tiny glass spherules at this boundary, mineralogical evidence of a high-energy impact. These minerals could only have formed in the intense heat and pressure of a cosmic collision. It is honestly a stark and silent memorial, a geological tombstone marking the end of one of the most spectacular chapters in the history of life on Earth. The silence that followed was profound, echoing across empty plains and barren seas. The age of reptiles was over. In the wake of destruction, the world waited in stillness, poised for the slow and uncertain dawn of a new era. In the midst of this global devastation, when the world seemed stripped of hope, life, miraculously, held on. The aftermath of the cataclysm was a crucible, testing every living thing in ways never before imagined. Survival was not a matter of brute strength or sheer size, but of adaptability, resourcefulness, and sometimes pure chance. The survivors were those who could bend without breaking, who could find opportunity in adversity. The creatures that made it through the extinction event were generally small, inconspicuous, and possessed lifestyles that allowed them to shelter from the worst of the apocalypse. Their ability to hide, to wait out the darkness and cold, became their greatest asset. Large, specialized animals, those dependent on a single food source or habitat, were the first to vanish. But small generalists, able to eat almost anything and adapt to rapidly changing conditions, found a way to persist. Their flexibility in diet and behavior was a secret weapon. These survivors inherited a broken world, stepping into the silence left by giants. They were the fortunate few, destined to become the ancestors of all the life that would eventually flourish in the new era. Among the land survivors were some distant relatives of the creatures that would one day dominate the planet. These early mammals, though humble in appearance, possessed remarkable survival strategies. Most were no larger than a rat, yet their small size was a powerful advantage. They could slip into crevices, burrow underground, and evade predators or environmental hazards with ease. Their success can be attributed to a suite of key traits: agility, caution, and a relentless drive to seek out food and shelter wherever it could be found. Evolution favoured those who could adapt quickly, who could change their habits and diets as the world changed around them. Their small bodies required far less food than the massive dinosaurs that once ruled the land. This meant they could survive on scraps, seeds, insects, roots and decaying matter when resources were scarce. Many were expert burrowers, able to retreat into underground tunnels to escape the initial searing heat and the long, bitter cold that followed. These subterranean refuges became sanctuaries, shielding them from the chaos above. Their fur provided vital insulation against the cold, and as warm-blooded creatures they could remain active even as temperatures plummeted. This ability to regulate their own body heat was a crucial evolutionary advantage. Many were omnivores or insectivores, able to subsist on whatever the devastated landscape offered. Insects, worms, roots, and decaying organic matter became lifelines, and those who could exploit these resources thrived. Another remarkable group of survivors were the ancestors of modern birds. Their story is one of extraordinary adaptation and resilience. Birds, the living descendants of small feathered theropod dinosaurs, carried with them the legacy of their ancient lineage. Their feathers, originally evolved for insulation and display, now served as vital protection against the cold. The larger, more primitive birds of the Cretaceous, unable to adapt to the new world, disappeared. Their size and specialized habits became liabilities in a time of scarcity. But smaller, beaked birds endured. Their compact bodies and versatile diets allowed them to exploit new niches and survive where others could not. Flight was their greatest gift. It allowed them to travel vast distances in search of food and shelter, to escape danger, and to colonize new habitats as the world slowly recovered. Their beaks, shaped by countless generations of evolution, became versatile tools, cracking open tough seeds, probing for hidden insects, and extracting nourishment from the most unlikely places. These small, resourceful avian dinosaurs were the only branch of their family tree to survive the cataclysm, a testament to the power of adaptation and the unpredictability of fate. In the water, survival depended on both habitat and diet. Aquatic environments offered unique refuges, but only for those able to exploit them. Freshwater ecosystems saw the persistence of turtles, crocodilians, and amphibians, ancient lineages with time-tested survival strategies. These creatures could take shelter in the water or burrow into the mud at the bottom of ponds and rivers, protecting themselves from the worst of the environmental upheaval. Their ability to enter states of torpor or hibernation allowed them to wait out the most inhospitable periods. In the ocean, survival was often a matter of depth. Creatures living in the deep sea, far from the chaos at the surface, were better insulated from the extinction's immediate effects. Life that did not depend directly on sunlight, such as organisms clustered around deep-sea hydrothermal vents, continued on, sustained by chemical energy from the Earth itself. Scavengers and detritivores, creatures that fed on dead organic matter, thrived in the aftermath. The mass death in the oceans provided a sudden, massive source of food, raining down from above, fueling a hidden web of life in the darkness. Across every environment, the ability to exploit new resources, to change and adapt, was the ultimate secret of survival. Evolution, relentless and impartial, favoured those who could innovate, who could endure, and who could seize the smallest chance to live on. In the ashes of disaster, the seeds of new life were sown, each survivor a testament to the power of adaptation and the endless creativity of nature. As the dust slowly began to settle, a hush fell over the battered world. The silence was profound, broken only by the faint rustle of wind through the remnants of ancient forests and the distant calls of the few survivors. The world that emerged from the devastation was eerily quiet, its vast landscape stripped of the thunderous presence that once dominated them. The extinction event had swept away the old order, leaving behind a planet transformed and emptied of its giants. As the long, frigid impact winter faded and the skies cleared, sunlight once again touched the battered earth, coaxing life from the ashes. Sunbeams filtered through the thinning clouds, illuminating a world in recovery, where the first green shoots began to pierce the blackened soil. Yet the planet was a mere shadow of its former self. The once mighty forests had been reduced to charred stumps and open ground. The towering trees that had formed dense canopies for millions of years were gone, their remains scattered across the land. In their place, vast fields of ferns unfurled, carpeting the ground in a lush green blanket, a phenomenon known as the fern spike, a telltale sign in the fossil record of ecological upheaval. These resilient plants thrived in the disturbed soils, quickly reclaiming the devastated landscape. The fern spike marked a world in transition, a stage reset for new actors. The thunderous footsteps of the dinosaurs had vanished. Their reign ended in an instant. In their absence, an uncanny silence settled over the land, a quiet that would soon be filled by new life. The ecological stage, once crowded with giants, now lay open and waiting. Into this vacant world crept the survivors, small, unassuming mammals whose ancestors had endured in the shadows for over 100 million years. With the overwhelming competition and predation of the dinosaurs gone, the evolutionary shackles that had kept mammals small and nocturnal were suddenly broken. For the first time, mammals could safely venture out in daylight, exploring the open world and its new possibilities. This was a pivotal moment in evolutionary history, a dawn for the mammals. The world was now filled with empty ecological niches, each a role waiting to be filled. From dense forests to open plains, from riverbanks to mountain slopes, opportunities abounded for those able to adapt. The recovering vegetation grew unchecked, with no large herbivores to graze it down. And with no great predators stalking the land, the world was, for a time, a place of relative peace for the survivors. The mammals that emerged were diverse in form, though still small, shrew-like insectivores, nimble tree climbers, burrowers and seed-eaters. Each species began to carve out its own place in this new world, exploring every available habitat and resource. This new era, beginning 66 million years ago, is known as the Cenozoic era, the age of new life. The Cenozoic would become a time of extraordinary evolutionary experimentation and expansion. Mammals diversified into a dazzling array of forms. Some remained insect eaters, while others evolved to eat seeds, fruits, or even other animals. In the first few million years after the extinction, during the Paleocene, the recovery was slow but steady. The forests gradually returned, and with them new opportunities for life. The mammals of this era were still small, creatures like the multituberculates with their rodent-like teeth, and the early placentals and marsupials, each exploring different diets and lifestyles. Some took to the trees, developing grasping hands and keen eyesight. Others became expert burrowers, digging into the safety of the earth. This was a time of adaptive radiation, as mammals rapidly evolved new forms to exploit the empty world. Some experimented with new diets, herbivores, omnivores, and even the first small carnivores appeared, each adapting to the resources at hand. No longer confined to the shadows, mammals began to explore the daylight, their senses and bodies adapting to new challenges. Some developed specialized teeth for grinding tough plants, while others evolved sharp incisors for gnawing or canines for hunting. A few even began to experiment with new ways of moving, climbing, gliding, swimming and digging, each innovation opening new ecological roles. Alongside the mammals, the birds, descendants of the surviving dinosaurs, also flourished. They radiated into a spectacular variety of forms, from tiny insect eaters to large flightless predators. Some birds took to the ground, evolving into towering, swift-footed hunters that temporarily filled the role of top predators. These flightless birds, with powerful legs and sharp beaks, dominated the open plains for millions of years. Others soared above the forests, their wings carrying them to new habitats and food sources. Over time, birds diversified into the vast array of species that would come to fill the skies, forests and wetlands of the world. The world was being repopulated, its empty spaces filled by the descendants of survivors, each adapting, evolving and thriving in their own way. The new rulers of Earth were warm-blooded, adaptable and inventive, mammals and birds, each exploring the limits of what life could become. The catastrophic end of the age of dinosaurs had cleared the way for a new evolutionary drama, one that would see mammals rise from obscurity to become the dominant force in nearly every corner of the planet. As the sun rose over a recovering world, the stage was set for the next great chapter in the history of life, a chapter written by the quiet, persistent rise of the mammals. The Cenozoic era marked a breathtaking surge in the diversity and complexity of mammalian life, a true explosion of evolutionary innovation that would reshape the planet forever. As the Earth's climate gradually stabilized, forests and grasslands flourished, creating a patchwork of new habitats. In these revitalized ecosystems, mammals began to radiate into forms and lifestyles never before seen. Some lineages grew to enormous sizes, like the Brontotheres and Uintotheres, giants that rivaled the dinosaurs in stature, now dominating the open plains and marshes. Others specialized in new ways of life. Some took to burrowing underground, while others became nimble climbers or swift runners, each adapting to the opportunities and challenges of their environment. In the dense, shadowy rainforests, the first primates emerged, small, agile creatures with grasping hands and keen eyesight, perfectly suited for a life spent leaping and climbing through the tangled canopy. In the woodlands, tiny ancestors of horses and tapirs browsed on tender shoots, their toes spreading their weight on the soft forest floor, while their teeth evolved to handle a variety of plant foods. Meanwhile, new predators appeared, nimble, sharp-toothed hunters like the nimravids and creodonts, each evolving unique strategies to stalk, ambush, or chase their prey. As the Cenozoic progressed, the planet itself was in flux. Tectonic shifts, volcanic eruptions, and changing sea levels continually reshaped the land, driving further adaptation and innovation. The warm, humid world of the early Cenozoic gradually cooled and dried, transforming vast forests into open woodlands and eventually sweeping grasslands. This shift in vegetation was revolutionary. Grasses, with their tough, silica-rich blades, began to dominate, creating new challenges and opportunities for herbivores. The shrinking forest gave way to vast grasslands, where herds of evolving horses, rhinos and antelopes roamed in search of food and safety in numbers. This new environment became a crucible for evolutionary change, driving the rise of animals built for speed, endurance and cooperation. Grazers developed high-crowned teeth to handle abrasive grasses, and their limbs lengthened for swift escapes from predators. Horses, rhinos and antelopes became icons of the plains, their bodies streamlined for life on the move, their social structures evolving to protect the young and outwit their enemies. Predators, too, were transformed. Some became pursuit hunters, relying on speed and teamwork to bring down prey in the open. The open grasslands favoured those who could run fast and far, or who could blend into the landscape and strike with precision. The ancestors of dogs and cats refined their hunting skills, some forming packs for coordinated attacks, others perfecting the art of solitary stalking. In the oceans, a different revolution was underway. Some mammals, like the ancestors of whales and dolphins, returned to the water, their bodies transforming into streamlined shapes for life at sea. These marine mammals soon became the new rulers of the oceans, evolving powerful tails, sophisticated sonar, and complex social behaviours to hunt and thrive in their watery world. Across every continent and in every sea, mammals diversified to fill every available niche: burrowers, climbers, swimmers, runners and flyers, each uniquely adapted to their corner of the world. The world teemed with giants and oddities, armoured glyptodonts, towering ground sloths, and herds of massive mammals that shaped the very landscapes they inhabited. But this evolutionary burst was not just about size. Mammals diversified into an astonishing array of forms, from the tiniest shrew to the largest land beasts. Some developed armour, others prehensile tails or elongated snouts, each adaptation a response to the demands of their environment and the opportunities it offered. Bats, the only mammals to truly master flight, evolved wings from their hands, filling the night skies with agile insect hunters and pollinators. Primates, with their forward-facing eyes and dexterous hands, became experts at navigating the complex, three-dimensional world of the treetops, developing keen senses and remarkable agility. The world was filling with creatures that would one day become the familiar animals of today: elephants, camels, deer, and more, each lineage tracing its roots to this age of innovation. From the ashes of catastrophe, the small, resilient survivors multiplied and spread, giving rise to a vibrant, ever-changing tapestry of mammalian life. The age of mammals had truly begun, a testament to the boundless creativity of evolution and the endless possibilities that arise when life is given the chance to flourish. In the aftermath of the Great Extinction, the world was quiet, its rulers gone. But in the shadows and undergrowth, the tiny survivors, mammals, began their remarkable journey. These early mammals were mostly small, shrew-like creatures, adapted to a life of caution and secrecy. Their keen senses and warm-blooded bodies allowed them to thrive in the cool, dark nights, avoiding the dangers that still lurked in the recovering world. As the forests returned and the world grew lush again, mammals began to diversify. Some took to the trees, developing grasping hands and flexible limbs, while others remained on the ground, perfecting their senses of smell and hearing. The branches of the mammalian family tree spread wide. Some lineages evolved to glide from tree to tree, while others became expert burrowers, tunneling beneath the surface for safety and food. In the rivers and lakes, adventurous mammals took to the water. Over generations their bodies adapted, limbs became flippers, fur grew dense and waterproof, and some even developed the ability to hold their breath for long periods, giving rise to the first aquatic mammals. As climates shifted and grasslands spread, new opportunities arose. Some mammals grew larger, their teeth and stomachs evolving to process tough grasses. Herds of these grazers began to roam the open plains, followed by swift-footed predators. Predatory mammals, too, diversified. Some developed powerful jaws and saber-like teeth, while others formed packs, relying on cooperation and speed to bring down prey. Across the world, mammals experimented with new ways of raising their young. Marsupials carried their offspring in pouches, while monotremes laid eggs, a link to their distant reptilian ancestors. Some mammals took to the skies. Bats, with their delicate wings and remarkable echolocation, became the only true flying mammals, filling the night with their silent hunts. Over millions of years, mammals radiated into an astonishing array of forms. Rodents gnawed their way into every continent, ungulates thundered across the plains, carnivores prowled forests and tundra, and insectivores rooted through the soil. Social bonds grew strong in many groups. Mammalian mothers nurtured their young with milk, and some species formed complex societies, communicating with calls, scents, and gestures. As ice ages came and went, mammals adapted to the cold. Some grew thick fur and fat layers, while others learned to hibernate, sleeping through the harshest winters. In deserts, mammals evolved to conserve water and survive extreme heat. Camels stored fat in their humps, while tiny rodents lived in cool burrows, emerging only at night. In rainforests, mammals became specialists. Sloths moved slowly among the branches, while anteaters developed long tongues to feast on insects hidden in the wood. The fossil record tells the story of this incredible journey. Layer by layer, it reveals the rise of mammals from humble beginnings to a position of remarkable diversity and adaptability. The legacy of the KPG extinction was not just the end of an era, but the beginning of a new one in which mammals would come to fill every corner of the globe. The story of the asteroid that ended the age of dinosaurs is forever entwined with the rise of mammals. Had that cataclysmic event not occurred, the world would have remained the domain of the dinosaurs, and mammals might never have emerged from the shadows. Instead, the stage was cleared, and the tiny, resilient mammals seized their chance, evolving into the astonishing variety of forms we see today. From the deepest oceans to the highest mountains, from the densest forests to the driest deserts, mammals have conquered every environment, each lineage telling a story of adaptation and survival. The journey of mammals is a testament to the power of chance, catastrophe, and resilience in the history of life. A single event, 66 million years ago, ended one world and made another possible. The rise of mammals underscores how fragile and interconnected life is, and how the fall of one great dynasty can, over immense spans of time, pave the way for the rise of another. The story of the dinosaurs' demise is not just a tale of destruction. It is also the creation story of the mammals, written in the stars and in the ancient rock of our planet. As mammals spread across the globe, two extraordinary lineages began to carve out their own unique destinies, the Marsupials and the Monotremes. Their stories, unfolding in parallel to their placental cousins, add striking diversity to the Mammalian saga. Marsupials, with their remarkable pouches, found their greatest success on the isolated land masses of Australia and South America. Their strategy was simple, yet ingenious: give birth to tiny, premature young, then shelter and nourish them in a warm, protective pouch. This adaptation allowed marsupials to thrive in challenging and unpredictable environments. In Australia, marsupials became the dominant mammals, evolving into an astonishing variety of forms. Kangaroos bounded across open plains, their powerful hind legs propelling them over vast distances in search of food and water. Koalas adapted to life in the treetops, feeding almost exclusively on tough eucalyptus leaves, thanks to specialized digestive systems. The elusive numbat developed a long, sticky tongue to feast on termites, while the Tasmanian devil emerged as a fierce scavenger, its jaws capable of crushing bone. Meanwhile, in the forests and grasslands of South America, opossums became masters of survival. Their ability to play dead, literally shutting down their bodies in response to threats, confused predators and gave them a second chance at life. Marsupials, with their diverse adaptations, filled ecological roles, from burrowers and climbers to grazers and hunters. Even more ancient and mysterious are the monotremes, the egg-laying mammals. Today, only a handful survive: the spiny echidnas and the enigmatic platypus. Monotremes blend reptilian traits with mammalian features, a living link to the distant past. Echidnas, covered in protective spines, use their long snouts to probe for ants and termites, while the platypus, with its duck-like bill and webbed feet, hunts underwater using electroreception to sense the faintest movements of prey. Despite their rarity, monotremes have persisted for over 100 million years, surviving dramatic changes in climate and landscape. Their resilience speaks to the power of ancient adaptations and the importance of occupying unique ecological niches. These remarkable mammals, with their pouches and eggs, remind us that evolution is not a straight line, but a branching tree, full of surprising experiments and enduring success stories. The marsupials and monotremes continue to shape the ecosystems they inhabit, a testament to the inventiveness of life in the wake of catastrophe. In the wake of ancient upheavals, a new force began to shape the world's landscapes: the placental mammals. Unlike their marsupial and monotreme relatives, placental mammals develop their young within the safety of the womb, nourishing them through a complex placenta. This innovation allowed for longer gestation, resulting in well-developed offspring ready to face the challenges of a changing planet. From their ancestral roots, placental mammals radiated outward, adapting to every corner of the globe. In the dense forests of Eurasia, nimble insectivores scurried beneath the leaf litter, while in the open plains of North America, early hoofed mammals began to graze in herds. Some, like the ancestors of whales, ventured back into the oceans, trading limbs for flippers and becoming giants of the deep. Others, such as bats, took to the skies, mastering the art of flight and spreading to distant lands. As continents drifted and climates shifted, placental mammals evolved into an extraordinary array of forms. Rodents, with their ever-growing teeth, became some of the most adaptable and prolific mammals on Earth. Carnivores, wolves, big cats and bears rose to the top of food chains, shaping the lives of countless species around them. Elephants and rhinoceroses became ecosystem engineers, their movements opening up forests and creating new habitats for plants and animals alike. With each new adaptation, placental mammals transformed the very fabric of their environments. They formed complex webs of interaction, pollinating flowers, dispersing seeds and maintaining the delicate balance of predator and prey. Their spread drove waves of evolutionary change, prompting both competition and cooperation with other animals. The story of placental mammals is one of relentless exploration and innovation. From the frozen tundra to the sun-baked savannas, they have filled every available niche, their diversity a testament to the power of adaptation. Long before the dawn of humanity, placental mammals were already shaping the world, leaving an indelible mark on the history of life on Earth. As the dust settled on a world forever changed, the Paleogene period ushered in a new age, a time when mammals flourished as never before. This was a world in flux, continents drifting, climates warming, and forests spreading like emerald carpets across the land. In this dynamic landscape, mammals embarked on an unprecedented journey of diversification. In the lush rainforests of what is now Europe, tiny primates called adapiforms leapt from branch to branch, their grasping hands and keen eyesight hinting at futures yet to come. Nearby, the peculiar herbivore Coryphodon waded through ancient swamps, its massive hippo-like body perfectly suited to a semi-aquatic lifestyle. On the open plains, herds of early perissodactyls, relatives of horses and rhinos, galloped through the grasses, while nimble artiodactyls, ancestors of deer and antelope, browsed on tender shoots. The Paleogene seas teemed with life as well. Giant predatory birds known as terror birds stalked the South American coasts, filling the role left vacant by vanished dinosaurs. In the rivers and lakes, ancient relatives of modern whales, such as Ambulocetus, paddled through the shallows halfway between land and sea. Across the globe, mammals experimented with form and function. Some, like the armoured glyptodonts, wore protective shells, while others, such as the creodonts, evolved into fearsome predators with bone-crushing jaws. In the forests of North America, multituberculates, rodent-like mammals with specialized teeth, thrived for millions of years before gradually giving way to new competitors. This was an era of bold innovation, where mammals adapted to every conceivable environment. From the canopy to the forest floor, from rivers to rocky outcrops, their diversity exploded, setting the stage for the incredible evolutionary stories yet to unfold. The Paleogene period stands as a testament to the resilience of life, a time when mammals seized the moment and painted the world with their boundless variety. As the Paleogene period gave way to the Neogene, a new chapter in the story of life on Earth began to unfold. The world was transforming once again, And this time it was the rise of large herbivorous mammals that would leave an indelible mark on the landscapes. In the sprawling savannas of Africa, massive herds of proboscideans, the ancestors of modern elephants, roamed freely. These colossal creatures, with their ever-growing tusks and powerful trunks, became the architects of their environment. By uprooting trees and trampling vegetation, they created open grasslands that would become home to a plethora of other species. In South America, the mighty ground sloths, such as Megatherium, lumbered through the forests and plains. Standing over 20 feet tall, when on their hind legs, these gentle giants used their enormous claws to strip bark from trees and reach for the highest leaves. Their feeding habits shaped the plant communities, fostering the growth of certain tree species while suppressing others. Meanwhile, in North America, the plains were dominated by the likes of the colossal bison and the towering mammoths. These grazers moved in vast migratory patterns, their hooves churning the soil and their grazing stimulating the growth of grasses. This constant cycle of disturbance and renewal created a dynamic ecosystem that supported a diverse array of life. In Asia, the ancestors of today's rhinoceroses, such as the woolly rhinoceros, roamed the tundras and steppes. Their thick fur and robust bodies allowed them to thrive in cold climates, while their grazing kept the vegetation in check, preventing any single species from dominating the landscape. Australia, too, had its giants. The Diprotodon, the largest marsupial to have ever lived, wandered the continent's woodlands and grasslands. These massive herbivores, resembling oversized wombats, played a crucial role in seed dispersal and the maintenance of plant diversity. Across the globe, these large herbivorous mammals did more than just survive, they engineered their habitats. Their movements, feeding habits and sheer presence shaped the physical and biological features of their environments, creating new niches and opportunities for other species to flourish. The rise of these giants marked a pivotal moment in Earth's history. They were the shapers of the land, the gardeners of the great plains, forests and savannas. Their legacy is etched into the very fabric of the ecosystems they helped create, a testament to the profound influence of herbivores on our planet's landscapes. As the great herbivores transformed the world's landscapes, a new force began to stalk the grasslands, forests and plains, the mammalian predators. These hunters, silent and unseen, evolved in tandem with their prey, shaping the balance of life through tooth and claw. In the shadowy woodlands of the Miocene, nimble saber-toothed cats, like the formidable Smilodon, prowled with silent precision. Their elongated canine teeth, once a mystery, revealed their purpose in powerful ambushes, delivering fatal bites to the throat or belly of unsuspecting prey. Unlike today's big cats, these ancient hunters relied on stealth and bursts of strength rather than long chases to bring down giants. Elsewhere, packs of early canids, the ancestors of wolves and wild dogs, perfected the art of endurance hunting. Working together, they wore down massive herbivores through relentless pursuit, using coordinated teamwork and keen senses to anticipate their quarry's every move. Their success wasn't measured by brute force, but by stamina, strategy and social bonds. In South America, the terror birds, giant, flightless avian predators, ruled before being challenged by evolving mammalian carnivores. Marsupial lions, with their powerful jaws and retractable claws, emerged as apex hunters, adapting to fill predatory roles in unique, isolated ecosystems. Even the smallest predators played their part. Mustelids, the ancestors of today's weasels and otters, brought agility and cunning to the hunt. They slipped into burrows, snatched eggs from nests, and hunted in water and on land, proving that size wasn't everything in the game of survival. These predators were more than just killers. They were ecosystem engineers. By keeping herbivore populations in check, they prevented overgrazing and promoted plant diversity. Their presence sparked evolutionary arms races, pushing prey species to develop new defences, speed, camouflage and herding behaviours, fueling the endless dance of adaptation. The rise of mammalian predators added a new dimension to life on Earth. They brought balance, drove innovation, and ensured that the story of the grasslands, forests and plains would be one of constant change, a world forever shaped by the silent, deadly shadows that moved within it. The world of mammals was not only shaped by tooth and claw, but also by the invisible threads that tied individuals together. In the wake of relentless predation and shifting climates, mammals began to innovate in a new way through the power of social behaviour. Across the open plains, herds of ancient horses, antelope and bison moved as one. Safety in numbers became their best defence. With hundreds of eyes and ears, herds could spot danger long before a lone animal ever could. Alarm calls rippled through the group, triggering a synchronized stampede that left predators in a cloud of dust. Within these herds, complex hierarchies formed. Leaders guided the group, mothers protected their young, and social bonds eased the stresses of survival. Below the surface, a quieter revolution was unfolding. Small mammals, threatened by both predators and harsh weather, turned to the earth itself for refuge. Burrowing became an art, perfected by creatures like early mole rats and ground squirrels. These underground architects created elaborate tunnel systems, complete with sleeping chambers, nurseries and even food storage. Living together in close quarters demanded cooperation, sharing warmth, warning of intruders and raising young as a community. But perhaps the most profound change came with the rise of mammalian communication. From the subtle scent markings of foxes to the complex vocalizations of prairie dogs, mammals found new ways to share information. Some calls signaled food, others warned of danger, and a few even expressed comfort or affection. These signals, whether a thumping foot or an ultrasonic chirp, wove individuals into tightly knit groups. The social revolution of mammals was not about strength or speed, but about connection. It was an invisible shield against the hardships of ancient Earth and a force that would shape the destinies of countless species. Through herding, burrowing and communication, mammals learned that together they could overcome almost anything, a lesson written not just in their bones, but in the bonds they shared. But the story of mammalian innovation didn't stop at the land. As continents shifted and ancient seas expanded, a bold new frontier called to the mammals the water. In a world dominated by towering reptiles of the deep, a handful of mammals began a remarkable transformation, returning to the aquatic realm from which all life had once emerged. It began with small, otter-like creatures venturing into rivers and coastal shallows, their bodies gradually adapting for swimming. Limbs became flippers, fur thickened into waterproof coats, and nostrils migrated to the tops of their heads. Over millions of years, some of these pioneers would become the ancestors of today's seals and sea lions, masters of both land and sea, able to birth and nurse their young on rocky shores before slipping into the waves to hunt. But the most astonishing metamorphosis belonged to the whales. Descended from hoofed land mammals, early whales took the plunge, their bodies reshaping for a life spent entirely in the ocean. Legs dwindled to vestiges, tails broadened into powerful flukes, and their lungs evolved to hold a single mighty breath for deep, silent dives. From river-hunting ancestors to the titanic blue whale, the largest animal ever to live, these creatures turned the oceans into highways, singing haunting songs that echoed across the watery world. Seals, manatees, dolphins and whales, each followed unique paths, but all shared a common legacy, the ability to thrive where few mammals dared. They learned to navigate by sound, to find their way in the dark, and to raise their young in the embrace of the tides. Their return to the water was not just survival, but a triumphant expansion of the mammalian story, proof that with the right adaptations, even the most unlikely environments could become home. In the endless blue, mammals wrote a new chapter of evolution, one of daring leaps and graceful dives. The conquest of the water stands as a testament to their resilience, creativity, and unending drive to explore every corner of our ancient world. But the saga of mammalian survival didn't end at the ocean's edge. As Earth's climate shifted and continents drifted, new lands emerged, some cloaked in endless ice, others scorched by relentless sun. In these harshest corners of the globe, mammals faced their greatest tests yet. In the frozen wilderness of the poles, where winter nights last for months and temperatures plunge far below freezing, only the most ingenious could endure. The polar bear, with its dense fur and thick layer of insulating fat, stalked the icy seas in search of seals. Arctic foxes changed their coats with the seasons, blending perfectly with snow or summer tundra. Deep beneath the snow, tiny lemmings tunneled, surviving the long, dark winter on hidden stores of food. Meanwhile, in the world's deserts, where daytime heat can melt the horizon and nights chill the bones, mammals found entirely different solutions. The fennec fox, with its oversized ears, radiates heat to keep cool. Kangaroo rats never need to drink, drawing all their water from the seeds they eat and hiding from the sun in cool burrows. Camels, the ships of the desert, store fat in their humps and can go days without water, their bodies a marvel of conservation. Across rocky mountains, steamy jungles and high-altitude plateaus, mammals continued to innovate. Some, like the snow leopard, grew thick, spotted coats and wide, padded paws for silent movement over icy cliffs. Others, like the pika, gathered grass in the brief summer to last through the cold. In every extreme, mammals proved one thing above all: adaptability is their superpower. By evolving new shapes, behaviors and survival strategies, they turned the planet's most unforgiving places into thriving homes. Whether braving the blizzard or outlasting the drought, mammals became true masters of extremes, pushing the boundaries of life ever further, and reminding us that resilience isn't just about surviving, but about thriving anywhere the world can take you. As mammals conquered every corner of the globe, they weren't alone in their journey. All around them, plants were evolving too, shaping the landscapes and, in turn, being shaped by their animal neighbours. In this silent partnership, mammals and plants wove a web of life that would transform entire ecosystems. Some mammals became gardeners of the wild. Bats, with their nimble wings and keen senses, flitted from flower to flower in the night, sipping sweet nectar and carrying pollen on their fur. In tropical forests, flying foxes pollinated giant blossoms that opened only after sunset, ensuring the next generation of trees could thrive. On the ground, tiny marsupials and rodents nibbled on fruits and berries, their journeys scattering seeds far from the parent plant. Each forgotten nut or buried acorn had a chance to sprout, thanks to the busy work of these furry dispersers. Elephants, the giants of the savannah and jungle, played their part too. As they lumbered through dense forests, they devoured fruits whole and carried seeds for miles in their bellies. Later their dung became fertile ground, giving new life to the seeds they'd swallowed. Even the humble agouti, a forest-dwelling rodent, helped rare trees survive by hiding seeds underground, some of which would be forgotten and sprout into towering giants. In return, plants adapted to entice their mammalian partners. Some evolved bright, nutritious fruits or sweet nectar, irresistible to hungry mammals. Others grew tough shells or spiky husks, ensuring only certain animals could crack them open, forging unique alliances between species. Through countless generations, This co-evolution shaped the world's forests, grasslands and deserts. Mammals and plants became partners in survival, each dependent on the other for food, shelter and the promise of future generations. In the grand tapestry of life, their story is one of quiet cooperation, where every fruit eaten and every seed carried helps the world grow a little greener. Across the vast stretch of the Cenozoic era, the fate of mammals was written not just by tooth and claw, but by the restless moods of the planet itself. As continents drifted and collided, mountain ranges rose and oceans shifted their courses. The climate danced between extremes, sculpting the very world mammals called home. At times, warmth blanketed the earth, jungles and forests stretching from pole to pole. Mammals flourished in these green worlds. Tiny insect eaters scurried through the undergrowth, while tree dwellers leapt from branch to branch, their lives woven into the dense canopy. But change was always on the horizon. When volcanic eruptions and shifting tectonic plates altered ocean currents, temperatures plunged. Ice crept from the poles, locking water into glaciers and transforming lush forests into open grasslands and windswept tundras. In these new landscapes, mammals faced a test of adaptability. Some grew thick coats and layers of fat to weather the cold. Others developed longer limbs and faster gaits, built for life on the open plains. For every cooling, there was a warming. Ancient ice melted, seas rose, and forests returned, only to vanish again as the next cold epoch arrived. Each swing of the climate's pendulum forced mammals to change, move, or disappear. Some, like the mighty woolly rhinoceros and the towering Indricotheres, thrived for a time, only to vanish when the world shifted yet again. Through droughts, deluges, and endless cycles of freeze and thaw, new forms emerged. Some lean and swift, others burrowing deep to escape the elements. The ever-changing climate became a relentless sculptor, chiseling away the old and revealing the new, ensuring that only the most adaptable would endure. In this grand experiment, the story of mammals is one of resilience and transformation. Every climate shift was an invitation to evolve, to innovate, to survive. And so, with each new era, the world's mammals rose to meet the challenge, forever shaped by the shifting skies above.